The soft give of the mattress beneath me, and the way their presence filled the room without overwhelming it. Ryan traced the length of my arm, his touch gentle, as though he was writing something onto my skin with every pass. Before I begin, please press that like button and subscribe. It means more than you know. It started on a regular Thursday. I remember clearly because the weather was undecided. The clouds kept folding over the afternoon sun like they were hiding something tender. I had just wrapped up a long meeting that left me feeling hollow, like I'd been skimming across the top of life instead of sinking into anything meaningful. I needed air, something quiet, so I went for coffee. Not my usual place, but a hidden café down a narrow street, the kind of place that only reveals itself when your thoughts are somewhere else. I walked in, grateful for the stillness. The smell of roasted beans and old wood wrapped around me. I chose a booth near the window, ordered a cappuccino, and opened a journal I hadn't touched in what felt like forever. That's when I noticed them. Two men at the far side of the room. They sat like they belonged there, comfortable and still. They couldn't have been more different. One had eyes that cut through the space, focused, dark, a little unreadable. The other had a softness in his face, the kind of expression that reminded me of sunlight in old photographs. They weren't talking much, but their presence made the room feel alive. I didn't mean to stare. It just happened. And then something unexpected. The one with the warm eyes looked straight at me. He didn't look away. Something in my chest stirred, not loudly, but enough to make me pause. I looked back down quickly, pretending to write, but my hand was unsteady. I could still feel his eyes, curious, not invasive, like he saw something familiar. A few minutes passed. Then I heard quiet steps approaching. I looked up and there he was standing by my table. He smiled, just a little, and gestured toward the empty seat across from me. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice calm and deep. My better sense hesitated, but something else in me, something quieter and older, nodded first. He sat. His name was Ryan. His voice had a way of settling into the spaces between words, unhurried and clear. We started with simple conversation, but it didn't stay simple. Every sentence led somewhere deeper. Every glance lingered a little longer. It felt like the moment had slowed down just for us. Then his friend came over, the intense one. He gave me a brief nod, then looked at Ryan. "She's interesting," he said without much inflection, but it didn't sound empty. Ryan smiled and looked at me. "Mind if we make this a 3-person table?" I let out a nervous laugh. "Do you two do this often? Chat up strangers?" Eli, the other man, leaned in slightly. "Only when it feels like we should." It could have felt strange. Too fast. A little surreal. But it didn't. It felt like finding something I didn't know I'd lost. Like warmth creeping back into your fingers after a long time in the cold. We sat there for what might have been hours, talking, sharing silence, watching the light shift across the walls. They were nothing alike, but somehow, together, they made sense. Ryan looked at me like I was a melody. Eli looked at me like I was a page he wanted to read more than once. The cafe grew quiet. The outside light began to dim into shades of early dusk. Ryan checked his phone, then looked back at me. "We're staying right across the street. Little hotel. There's a rooftop bar, quiet, nice music, great view. Want to join us?" I should have said no. Or asked more questions. But I didn't. I nodded and we stood. They walked ahead of me, and I followed. Our shadows joined as we crossed the street. In the elevator, none of us spoke. But the silence wasn't empty. It carried something with it. The rooftop was mostly quiet. The skyline was brushed with amber and deep navy. Music played from somewhere hidden, soft, steady, no lyrics, just feeling. We settled onto a corner couch. The cushions were thick, and the night air felt cool against my skin. Ryan on my left, Eli on my right. It didn't feel forced. It just was. Ryan reached for my hand, not to hold it, but to trace a finger along my wrist, slow and thoughtful, like he was learning me one heartbeat at a time. I breathed in slowly. Eli let his hand rest on my shoulder, drawing invisible shapes that left behind a whisper of warmth. I don't know when we crossed into something deeper. I just know that we did, and that I didn't resist it. Everything was slow, considerate. Nothing rushed. Every look, every pause, was a question I was allowed to answer in my own time. Ryan leaned closer and spoke softly, not in flirtation, but in recognition. "You feel like you've been here before," he said. Eli's hand rested between my shoulders, solid and reassuring. We didn't say much after that. Words would have gotten in the way. The room was small, but that night, it felt wide and endless. Every second stretched long and quiet, full of something bigger than explanation. The air carried their scent, something clean and human, familiar and close. Eli asked me questions without speaking. My breath answered them. It wasn't just touch. It wasn't just sensation. It was something deeper, something whole. I felt like I was sinking into something warm and necessary. My skin, my breath, my heart, everything was awake. When I closed my eyes, I saw colors. I felt emotion not as thought but as movement. At one point, the three of us lay there in a silence that felt full, not empty. I wasn't being held down. I was being held. Ryan ran his fingers through my hair, gentle and slow. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. "More than okay." Eli rested close beside me, his breath syncing with mine. "You feel like summer," he whispered. And I smiled into the dark. We stayed that way, quiet and close. There was laughter, soft and shared. There were touches that said more than words could ever manage. When the first light of morning touched the windows, I felt no regret. Only stillness. Only peace. They walked me down to the street, each holding one of my hands like the night hadn't ended yet. Ryan touched my fingers. "Thank you for trusting us."
Eli didn't speak.
He only brushed his thumb along my cheek, a quiet smile on his lips. I stepped into the early morning, the sky gray and pale, the city stretching itself awake. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I hadn't been looking for anything when I walked into that cafe. But sometimes, the unexpected finds you anyway. And in one strange, gentle night, with two people who became something more for a moment, I remembered how deeply I could feel, and how easily I could come back to life.